Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, library people. Day 59. Thank you. We are going on to disclosures of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Item number L, regarding the motion being presented tonight regarding the library.
Thank you. I myself will have a conflict with that. And if there's nothing else, then we'll move on to the approval of the council meeting held August 8th. Moved by Councillor Verbicki, seconded by Councillor Jacobs. All in favor? Carried. Is there any business arising out of the minutes? See nothing then. And we will move on to public meetings in Court of Revision. And I believe that will be Gary Smith. You'll need to push the button for the speaker, please, Gary.
Mayor and Council, the application being presented this evening is to consider a combined rezoning and consent application for a lot addition within the agriculturally designated area of the official plan. The proposal is to add the easterly portion of the agricultural residence that is actively farmed to the vacant cropped farmlands to the south of the site under the same family ownership. The proposed lot addition is consistent with the provincial policy statement. Policies regarding lot additions and boundary adjustments, as the lot addition not only maintains but also enlarges the farming activity within the prime agricultural area, and further does so without creating a new residential lot. Although construction of a residence on the existing vacant farm would be permitted. The official plan policies regarding land division also permits lot additions and minor boundary adjustments within the agriculturally designated areas. The proposed lot addition would be consistent with these policies. The severed and retained parcels would comply with the zoning bylaw with respect to the required lot minimum sizes, frontages, areas, and yard setbacks required for the existing residents and the structures in both of their respective A5 and A1 zones. Approval of the proposed lot addition and subsequent zoning bylaw amendments. The severed parcel from agricultural residents A5 to A1 can be supported as it is consistent with the PPS, the official plan policies, and applicable provisions of the zoning bylaw 890-09 as amended. Therefore, it is recommended that number one, the provisional approval of the consent application B1616 for the lot addition from 1502 Mercia Road to the abutting vacant farm to the south with the frontage to the east and along Mercia Road 2, owned by the estate of Annie Fulmer, be supported by council subject to the conditions listed in Schedule A. The zoning bylaw amendment, ZBA 135, to change the zone of the severed lands from A5 to A1 be appropriately and approved by council, and if no concerns are raised at the public meeting, the amending bylaw 47-16 be considered at the Monday, August 22nd council meeting. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Gary. It's a public meeting, so I'm going to ask if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this at all. No one? Then, council, are there questions? Mr. Jacobs. Oh, that's it? Moved by Mr. Jacobs, seconded by Mr. Wilkinson. Comments, questions? All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. And that's all 3 recommendations. Okay. So we're moving on to reports of staff and delegations. And this will be, bear with me just a minute here, the application for site plan control, and that is Danielle.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, members of council. The owners of Cervini Farms have submitted a site plan application for a new greenhouse development at the northeast corner of Highway 77 and County Road 14. They are looking to construct Phase 1 of their development. Phase 1 consists of just over 20 acres of greenhouse range, a service building, and a bunkhouse. A copy of that site plan was attached to the report. So their total property is just under 150 acres in area. It is designated for agricultural development, and it is zoned A1 under the zoning bylaw. Phase 1 complies with the zone provisions of the zoning bylaw as well as the development standards manual. As you can see on the site plan, the greenhouse, the service buildings and the entrances are oriented to be accessed off County Road 14. The applicant has obtained both the entrance and setback permits from the County of Essex. As well, this property is located within a Ministry of Transportation controlled corridor. MTO has reviewed the site plan. They have no concerns regarding the layout or access to Highway 77. The owner will be required to obtain the standard building and land use permits prior to the municipality issuing a building permit for this development. The MTO also requested that provisions be included in the site plan agreement to ensure that the on-site infrastructure, so the stormwater management pond, the entrances, that these are constructed as well as operated in accordance with the approved drawings and that the site operates in compliance with MTO standards. The municipality received and reviewed provisions that were to be included in the agreement from MTO. The Director of Legal and Legislative Services had made revisions, and we had forwarded those back to MTO. I can say that this afternoon, MTO forwarded confirmation that they accepted those provisions as revised by the Director of Legal and Legislative Services to be included in our standard agreement. We also received the standard correspondence from Sedantech with respect to the water availability to the site. The development will be subject to the standard site plan agreement as well as those provisions requested by the MTO. All additional phases will require review and approval by the municipality. So at this time, we're recommending that the site plan for Phase 1 be approved and that the site plan agreement includes certain provisions requested by the MTO for the construction and maintenance of on-site infrastructure and the operation of the site in accordance with MTO standards as drafted by the municipal solicitor, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute that site plan agreement.
Great, thank you, Danielle. Comments, questions from council? Moved by Councillor Rubicki, seconded by Councillor Dunn. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And then we move on to revisions to the site plan agreement with the nursing home facility at 30 Seacliff Drive, and that's you again, Danielle.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The owner of the new nursing home facility at 30 Seacliff has submitted a request to the municipality to amend the site plan approval that was given by council on May 9th of this year. That approval was for the construction of a 120-unit, 4-story building that will be used as a nursing home facility. That approval was subject to receiving final approvals from engineering for site servicing. So council did authorize administration to enter into the standard site plan agreement. Since that time, work has commenced on site and a building permit was issued for the pouring of the foundation. During the construction, it was noted that the foundation was poured based on plans not approved by council, and further to that building location didn't comply with the zoning bylaw. The owner of the property submitted a minor variance application right away to permit a reduction to the side yard setback, which is along the municipal trail. That reduction was from 50 feet to 31 feet. No comments or concerns were received from the abutting residents in the area, administration, or agencies, and the application was granted by the Committee of Adjustment. The last day of appeal was last week. The applicant is now seeking approval for a revised site plan based on that minor variance. So what has changed? So the revised site plan includes the main building has been shifted to the west, and it's in accordance with the minor variance that was granted. The parking area that was on the west side of the building along the municipal trail has now been moved to the east side of the building and is more central to that development. The loading bay that was on the west side of the building has been relocated to the south side of the building, and it now includes the required screening, which is an 8-foot board fence, and that's around the entire loading bay. The plan also eliminates a fencing requirement along the municipal trail. So as we were reviewing the plan, we noted that the original plan had a solid board-on-board fence along the municipal trail. We've reviewed it with the owner. We prefer not to have a fence along there. So the first phase, so where the Ontario Service Building is, there's no fence there. We want to keep that open for safety along the trail, eyes on the street. So we're just taking that off of the sketch. However, the fence along the rear of the property line between the residential properties, that's remaining. So that's existing, and that requirement is staying. As well, there was a pedestrian connection at the rear of the property that has been eliminated, but there is a pedestrian connection more central to the site. So we want to make sure that pedestrians can get on and off the trail onto this site, as well as the commercial properties in that area. So what hasn't changed? It's still a 4-story building, 120 units. The building is still U-shaped. There's still going to be a large amenity area or a landscape garden area to the rear of the building. That privacy fence that has been existing prior to all of this development occurring is remaining. The applicant is still providing, there was a significant amount of bicycle parking on the site. I believe that's the parking is on the east side now. And as well, the number of parking spaces being provided hasn't changed. They are still required to provide landscaping in accordance with their plans, as well as the lighting in accordance with their photometric plan. So none of that has changed with the shifting of the building. The site plan that is dated August 18th meets all of the zoning provisions in accordance with the minor variance that was granted, as well as the development standards manual. The development will be subject to the standard site plan agreement. So essentially, the written part of the agreement hasn't changed. All we're asking is that the approved schedule be changed. So that original approval from May 9th. The applicant and administration notes that there may be further amendments that are required to the site as development continues, and that we've advised the applicant that they'll need to obtain the necessary approvals for that. So we won't be surprised if we need to make some changes to these as they move along. The recommendation to council this evening is that the revisions to the site plan for 30 Seacliff Drive be approved, subject to the final approvals being obtained for stormwater management as well as servicing, that Schedule C to the site plan agreement that was approved on May 9th be deleted and it replaced with the site plan sketch that is dated August 18th, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute that site plan agreement.
Thank you, Danielle. Did Mr. Paroli or Mr. Baird want to speak to this at all? No? Okay. All right, thank you. Questions, Mr. Jacobs?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Danielle, you said something about the entrance to the trail. We requested that to be changed, or?
The original site plan showed a pedestrian connection at the rear of the property, so from that private garden area, as well as a pedestrian connection that is more central to the site. I believe there's also one closer to Seacliff. So in reviewing the fence, we noted that the one to the rear is not necessary from a municipal point of view because it'll be accessed directly to Mr. Paroli's site. However, we do want to make sure that the pedestrian connection at the middle of the site, so at the rear of the Service Ontario building and forward of the parking for this site, we want to make sure that that one's there. That's the one that's important to us. The one at the back will simply be access for Mr. Paroli's site from his own site.
Okay, and if I may, one other question. I was concerned about the lighting as well. I know in the past we've had, excuse me, we've had some issues with light pollution affecting the neighbors and so forth. Will this be taken care of, or have you designed that, Mr. Proley, or whoever? I'm sorry, I should have asked.
Good evening to council.
You'll have to identify yourself as per the rules, if you don't mind. Sure. Even though we said Mr. Paroli and you came up.
My name is Rob Paroli, and good evening. And just to answer your question, Councilor Jacobs, the lighting photometric plan that was submitted and approved by administration is what we're going to abide by. So we had some issues with the lighting on the apartment building, with light slipping over the parking shelter and getting into the neighbors' properties. And we've adjusted these lights, tipping them farther down, so there's not so much light going onto the neighboring properties. Shouldn't be any. And we're monitoring. We believe we have resolved that issue, but we'll be happy to monitor that with engineering to make sure. But we're not expecting any issues on the retirement home property, as there's no parking in the rear, and the lighting at the back will be simple park setting, like light standards or bollards, basically night lighting. So I'm not expecting any lighting issues on this development.
Okay, that was my concern. Also, while you're sitting, I'd like to compliment you on the tremendous job that you're doing down there. Those buildings are very attractive, and I compliment you on that. And on that, I would move.
I still have some
Oh,
questions.
okay.
Can I take? Okay.
I would move the recommendation.
All right, seconded by Mr. Hammond. And you have a question, Mr. Hammond?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, thank you. Rob, I'm surprised that you didn't correct Danielle. I know you'd rather refer to this as a retirement home rather than a nursing home, and we'll try to do that in the future. It's my understanding, though, the report talks about an overhead hydro service, and I thought my understanding was it was an underground hydro service that was causing us the difficulty.
Yes, Councillor Hammond, it is in fact an underground service. There is no overhead hydro services, so I'm not sure how that came about, but it is definitely an underground service that was interfering with our foundation.
Thank you. I have two questions, if I may, Danielle. Under your points of the changes, the loading bay on the west side has been relocated to the south side of the building. I'm fine with the screening, but I was just wondering about noise. I'm assuming it would be garbage trucks coming in, that kind of thing, for loading bays, and I just wondered noise level.
We did look at this because this was one of our concerns, and I think to call it a loading bay is really the most extreme. So the garbage is still being picked up on the west side of the building. It's sort of a roll out, and so it'll be your smaller service type of truck coming down that laneway. The loading bay at the rear, so what we did is we looked at the building plans. There's only man doors on the on that side of the building, and it's for access for utilities in the kitchen, so it's likely that you're going to get delivery vehicles there. So it'll be the backing up or the beeping, and that's the reason why the fencing, privacy fencing, has been installed for that reason. No other requirements under the zoning bylaw with respect to the location of it, so we felt that that complied, but it's, I would say that the garbage is going to be still on the west side at the same location halfway up the building. It will need to turn around, but that's going to be loaded in another area.
So you're confident on the noise level. Okay, thank you. And then the elimination of fencing, back to a little bit what Councillor Jacobs was saying. So you said there's no fence along the Service Ontario building, which I'm fairly familiar with the trail, and then you're going to not have any fencing back to where the residential properties start. Are you worried for privacy, or I just feel when there's a fence there, sometimes it keeps people out, but also keeps them in. And I realize it's not a nursing home. That's all. I'm just throwing that out there. Again, I just want to have a level of confidence that this is the right thing that we're asking for.
Sure. Madam, I guess the proper answer is we don't necessarily want to restrict our clients or tenants to be able to get on the walk path. It is a retirement home, so 75% of the tenants will be independent living. so they'll be able to come and go as they please. And we feel that it's less intrusive on their life to be bound by fences on more than what's on the south property right now. We're fully accepting what administration has asked, and we're happy with having no fence on the west property line.
Okay, that's good, and you're good with it too. Okay, that's great. So we've got the motion on the floor. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Welcome. And now we're moving on to the facility use agreement with the Windsor-Essex Catholic District School Board, and Terry Simons, please.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and members of council. I'm here tonight to discuss the facility use agreement with Cardinal Carter regarding the soccer and hockey skills academy. We were approached last year by the Windsor-Essex County District School Board to provide space for the grade 7 to 12 students at Cardinal Carter for a soccer and hockey skills academy. Central Park out of Windsor currently works with the Catholic School Board, providing over 300 students various academies such as hockey, soccer, baseball, and gymnastics. It's something that the Catholic School Board is promoting and trying to do more of in different areas, not just in Windsor. In April of this year, Council supported the proposed Soccer and Hockey Skills Academy and authorized the CAO and Director to negotiate a facility use agreement. We've worked with representatives of the Windsor-Essex County District School Board to prepare this agreement. It outlines the conditions of facility use and terms of compensation to the municipality on its initiative. In general, the middle school hockey and soccer programs, which is the grade 7 and 8 students, will be in the facility from 9 a.m. till noon, with 1 hour per day spent on their respective sport or physical education. The remaining time will be spent in a classroom setting that will be created at the complex. The secondary school age students will spend 1 hour 3 times per day in their respective sport, and then will return to school for their regularly scheduled classes. In negotiating this, we went with the cost per student approach. Going this way provides the school board an opportunity to work within a budget that allows them to promote the program year to year. From the municipality's perspective, it provides us a chance to utilize the facility in ways it has not been done before. So with that being said, and the report on the table, it's recommended that council approve the mayor and clerk to sign the facility use agreement as outlined. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. So, gentlemen, comments? Have you got questions? Mr. Hammond?
Yeah, I have a question, then I'd like to move the motion as well. I spoke with Terry very briefly about this. By the way, Terry, this is a win-win for us. It's great for the students, and it's certainly great for Cardinal Carter. We talked very briefly, and I just wondered, I would have to think that at some point, when the new LDSS gets up and running, that they may want to approach us for the same type of program that, you know, they may be able to use our facilities, and I'm just wondering if it's possible they can be able to work it in.
LDSS currently uses the facility for what they call a hockey class. It's in the mornings throughout the school year. They don't take it to the extent that the Catholic School Board's looking to take it. Hopefully very, very well may go that way. We do accommodate them, and it'll all depend on the times their classes run and what exactly they're expecting. But we would open to rent the facility for anything that gets people in the building.
Great, Terry, thank you. Good job. And as I said, I move the motion.
Moved by Mr. Hammond, Councillor Hammond, seconded by Councillor Dunn. Anyone else with that? Sure, Mr. Jacob, or Councillor Jacobs, sorry.
Thank you. I just want to make a statement. I think it's great that the initiative to get into partnerships of this type. And as Councillor Hammond said, maybe there's more that we can do for the other schools within the area to take advantage of what's available there for them. So I think it's a great move.
Thank you. I agree, it's a great move. I just wondered, though, when we have folks that get, shall we say, in a habit of coming at a certain time and it's peaceful and it's quiet, will this be intrusive to other programs that we have running at the same time?
It does affect some of the pickleball and badminton activity, regular programming times. I've spoke with the groups throughout the summer, a couple of them last week. They're appreciative that I came to them and spoke with them. They seemed accommodating to it. So with communication, they were accepting of that
Okay,
at this point.
good. Okay, just as long as we are prepared for complaints at some point in time, I would imagine. Okay, thanks so much. And all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Terry. We're moving right along here. Goodness gracious, it's only 6:30. And we will now move on to the Leamington Pollution Control Demolition Tender Award, and that's Shannon Bellew.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and members of council. Tonight I'm here to talk to you about the demolition of the old pollution control facility. The original pollution control plant was built back in the 60s, and its purpose was to service both the municipality and Hines. Over the years, portions of the plant have been decommissioned, starting in 2002, and then when the new plant was constructed beginning in 2009 and concluding in 2011, the rest of the facility was decommissioned. At this time, the original plant buildings and structures serve no purpose to us besides storage, and we do know that there are designated substances contained within those buildings. If there would be a need to upgrade and expand our current pollution control plant, the footprint of this area would be the perfect spot to do so. So as part of the demolition of the plant, there will be 20 structures, both above and below grade, demolished. And that's on the current site, as well as there will be one old sampling shed that will be demolished along Robson Road. All of the equipment and the materials will be removed from the site and disposed of accordingly, and any concrete will be crushed and reused at the site. Upon completion of the demolition, the site will be graded, it will be restored and seeded, and we're also looking to put a cedar hedge line around certain portions of the property boundary on the north, eastern, and western property lines. And we're also proposing to add a fence line along the new municipal lands that were purchased last year along Peter Avenue. During the course of the project, we will stay in touch with the nearby residents, whether online and by communications through letter, and the contractor will be responsible for monitoring the dust and noise at the site. So if there are any complaints at that time, they will be addressed accordingly. In order to proceed with awarding the demolition contract, we went through a two-stage process. The first stage was for pre-qualification, and what we did at that point was we invited contractors to submit, and their responses were evaluated based on a set of mandatory and technical requirements. So in order to move forward with the process, the contractor had to meet all of the mandatory requirements, and they had to score a minimum of 70 points on the technical side. Some of the technical elements that we evaluated were the contractor's corporate profile, their health and safety program, their project experience with other relevant demolition and earthworks projects, as well as the project team and the subcontractor's experience. There were a total of 12 submissions received, and 9 of those were pre-qualified to move on to stage 2. So stage 2 was the tender process, and of the 9 contractors that were pre-qualified, we did only receive 5 submissions, and a summary of those submissions is provided in the table for your review. Dillon Consulting was assisting us through this process, and they did review the tenders, confirmed accuracy of all of them with some minor mathematical errors found in 3. Those were reviewed and revised, and it did modify the order of the tenders that were initially received, but they are as presented in that table for you. The consultant, Dillon, is recommending that we do award the project to the lowest tender of Chute and Excavating, which is in the amount of $929,410. We do recognize that the chute and excavating tender was lower than the next lowest bid, substantially lower. Factors that may have impacted that are they do have their own on-site recycling yard, so they may be able to manage their off-site costs for managing, let's say, wood, concrete, and any yard waste. That could minimize their costs. And another thing that could have impacted their cost is that we did ask them to include the salvage value that they would give us for any equipment that was on site. And those itemized prices were included in the actual form of tender sheet. They weren't specified individually. So because of those salvage value items being built into the overall cost, there's no way for us to see the salvage value that one contractor gave us over the salvage value that another contractor gave us. The municipality has not worked with Shooten in the past. However, Dylan did speak to them on our behalf, and they are definitely committed to completing the project based on their tender submission. And we did do a reference check at the pre-qualification stage, and we talked to 3 or 4 of their references, or Dylan did on our behalf. And they all spoke highly of their demolition experience and performing well and on time in other past projects. Under the finances, the demolition project is currently approved under the capital budget for the PCC for this year. I've summarized what other allocations are going against that project so far this year in the table for you. The contract price did include a $100,000 contingency fund, and because of the nature of the demolition works, there could be some things that we come upon while we're doing the demolition that were not uncovered during the preliminary stages. Some of those could be additional designated substances that we need to manage and certain things like that. So it is reasonable to assume that we will likely use a good portion, if not all of that contingency fund. But even if we do spend the contingency fund, we're still anticipating a surplus of just over $200,000. So the recommendation before you is to award the contract for the Old Pollution Control Center to Shooten Excavating, also to authorize the mayor and clerk to be authorized to execute the contract, and also for us to retain Dillon Consulting to complete the on-site and contract administration observation activities. Thank you.
Thank you. I have some questions. We'll start with Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I know you gave us an explanation on the variance of the $700,000 approximately variance in the bids. And when you get that type of a spread, it always throws a flag up for me anyway. And I know that your explanation is that they can do a lot of this work on site, but that's still a substantial difference. Are we really comfortable with this? And if you are, and we award this contract, do we have assurances in place that this project will still come in under tender if we have to go somewhere else to finish it off?
I can say that, yes, we were definitely shocked by the difference in the price. Having said that, however, I do feel that the reasons that I mentioned previously do fit into that reasoning. Another reason that I can tell you about, when Dylan did have a conversation with the contractor, they did make a mistake in the tender, but they are confident that they will still be able to perform it for the tendered value. That was in just one section A, so that was one of the mathematical errors that we did find. But because it was submitted the way it was, they are confident and have guaranteed us that they will do it for that price. What I can say is that they have done other demolition work. Obviously, we don't have the support locally to say that they've done a project for us, unfortunately, but I believe I would rather be in the situation that we're in and being below cost, even if they were to come in with, a couple $100,000 in extra fees for additional designated substances or things like that we need to deal with. We're still going to be substantially below the budget that we have in front of us.
So they're guaranteeing you that they will do it for this amount, other than the contingencies that we have for unexpected things. But normally you have, I guess where I'm going with this is that you have already anticipated what's there. So barring what's unforeseen, I guess, do you figure it's going to be about 100,000 regardless one way or another, right?
Yes, there are areas that we haven't been able to see. For example, the old Headworks building that's at the northeast corner of the property. We can't access the basement of that flooring anymore. It's just not safe to go down there. So there could be additional designated substances or pieces of equipment down in that space that need to be dealt with that we haven't been able to assess. And there would be similar things, you know, maybe up on roofing structures that we haven't seen that we could come across. But yeah, we're confident that that the price that they have given us, that they will stick to that. And unless there's unforeseen, materials that we need to deal with, that may cause an overage. But beyond what was in the scope of work, there would be nothing additional.
Okay, I'm always skeptic when it's there, I know. All right, thank you very much.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Shannon, what's the time frame for this project, first of all?
The time frame we're anticipating, if we could start after Labor Day weekend in early September, we're anticipating 4 to 6 months. So the 4 months would bring us about to the end of the year, and then we would have a little bit of carryover into the spring for the seeding and the hedge line being planted and the fence line as well.
Will the neighbors be alerted of the upcoming construction? And what's the impact going to be to the neighbors there? Should there be any reason for concern with any of the construction debris or byproduct that happens to drift their way?
So we did already notify the one person on Robson Road, because when we were doing the pre-qualification process, we wanted them to know that they could see some contractors walking on the property adjacent to them, and we never heard anything back from them. That was by letter. We have also proposed to do a mass mail out for everybody in that area, as well as provide updates on the website in terms of the timeline and what's going on in the project. I don't anticipate that there will be any real issues. I mean, if we're operating between our normal 7 to 7 timeframe, Monday to Friday, there could be a little bit of noise with the excavation going on, but the closest properties are north of us, and there is a hedge line there, a tree line already, so hopefully that will provide us some buffer in terms of operating that way. They've been asked to provide water control and calcium oxide control for dust, so hopefully that will not be an issue, and that's all spec'd in the tender package.
Councillor Dunn?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Shannon, mine was just a quick question. I was just curious where the location of this shed is on Robson Road.
It is adjacent to 134 Robson, right in between 134 and the Selkirk Drain. So it is on the west side of the Selkirk Drain, right at the lake.
Okay, if there are no more questions, what are the wishes of council? Moved by Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by Councillor Hammond. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Shannon. And now, Mr. Botham, Erie Street South, Conover, Stewart Forest, sewer separation, and road reconstruction, and engineering services. Quite a package there.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. On June 17, 2016, the municipality did request proposals for consulting services for the sewer separation and road reconstruction of Erie Street South, Conover, Stewart, and Forest Avenues. The scope of services to be provided included things like surveying, utility coordination, project management, approvals, preliminary design, and detailed design. This project area is a high priority in our sewer separation program, as combined sewers from this area overflow directly into Lake Erie via the newly rehabilitated Erie Street South storm sewer outfall that we completed a couple of years ago. And following the future construction of the works that will be designed in this subject engineering assignment, sanitary sewer discharges will be eliminated entirely from that system and to Lake Erie at the waterfront. Also, I'd like to note that we'll be incorporating some traffic calming measures in this project near Seacliff Park. We'll be adding sidewalks along Conover Street and bike lanes along Erie Street South, and some other things that will come up during the design discussions. So we did receive 5 submissions. We reviewed them. We had a 3-member committee. AECOM submitted the most advantageous proposal and addressed all the necessary deliverables with project team, work plan, schedule, fees, and quality control. So what do I mean by most advantageous? So the recommended consultant did provide a clearly written proposal on how they'll handle things like utility coordination, civil design works, electrical design and lighting, streetscaping, environmental works, construction staging and detours, project meetings, permits, approvals, and stormwater quality controls. The evaluation group also felt that the anticipated final product from AECOM will be approved by council and the public, and that'll come back to council for approval before construction, obviously. The final product could reduce or will reduce the probability of things like delays, extras, and errors during construction. The recommended consultant clearly showed that they had reviewed our reference materials that were provided with that proposal request. And AECOM has completed several projects within the municipality of Leamington in the past and has performed well. I'd also like to note that the Erie South Conover Stewart Forest sewer separation project was applied for 50% funding under the Small Communities Fund program last year, and the announcements identifying successful projects is expected to occur later this summer and early fall this year. AECOM proposes to complete the engineering and design assignment for just under $250,000 and is expected to deliver that work April 7, 2017. The budget for this project in the 2016 budget was set at $255,000. So we are recommending that the services of AECOM be retained for the design of Erie Street South, Conover, Stewart, and Forest sewer separation and road reconstruction project.
Great, thanks, Alan. Are there any questions? Mr. Jacobs?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Alan, on this, when you're doing this, we talked about timelines and so forth. Will the construction timeline be coordinated so that we're not interfering with like our tourist season? Because we're doing so much more down at the waterfront when you tear up Erie Street. Like, are we looking at dates? Can they be specified during the construction or for the construction period? When you
We
do
can
the
certainly
tenders?
do that. Those are things that we're going to discuss during the design and during the approval process. We're learning a lot more now, even through the Peely Drive project, and those are certainly things that we're going to talk about with our consultant and with council, and we'll certainly consider those things before we go to tender for the construction project.
Okay, and that's why I'm asking to be sure that maybe you could coordinate that, because that, like Erie Street is not like the north end over Oak, but we did Erie, but that could be a complete shutdown because there's no commercial businesses down through there, I guess, and do detours, but whatever. I mean, that's all your, I guess, in your discussions with the contractors. But I guess I was looking at, and also in our concept for there, we have that sign, Welcome to Leamington, the new concept that we have coming up, and all that could be incorporated into this, so we don't have to do it all twice down there, be part of the project.
Sorry, just to get back to your other question, I mean, we can do construction and we can schedule things to the best of our ability, but we'll do our best to schedule around events and keeping the road open and closed. But we still have to work around Ministry of Labor laws and things like that. But to answer your question about trying to schedule things at the appropriate time and build things at an appropriate time to minimize disruption for traffic and for adjacent businesses, we'll certainly do our best, but there will likely be some at some point. As far as the welcome sign that you're referring to, is that the sign that we learned about last week?
Yeah, the new entrance for the waterfront sign, I'm assuming that's what you mean. Yeah, you know the one that's in the drawings, the project drawings that are for the new property that we just acquired. We're proposing an entrance sign in the uptown and one also from the lake as well. Sure, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The extent of Erie South beautification. All of that will be part of the discussion. We'll need to determine for this particular project, how far south do we go, given our other plans at the waterfront. So it may include that gateway or entrance sign to the waterfront that we talked about, or we may determine that that particular signage is better linked to other waterfront development initiatives. But we'll work towards there. Certainly the beautification of Erie Street South, so that when you're on Erie Street and you cross Seacliff, we certainly plan to spend a lot of time looking at that and designing something really nice for the community and something that has some impact.
Good. Thank you. Is that it then, Counselor? Okay, if you move it, I need a seconder. Counselor Wilkinson with the question. I have you down for question as well.
Yes. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Alan, I'm glad that you tried to describe that word advantageous. I received concerns over this over the weekend and been working with staff, of course, over the weekend to try and figure out how the selection process went. I thank you for explaining that. If you could, when it comes to the selection process, whatever you could share with us, what I liked about the selection process, the parts that I heard that I really liked is that 3 staff members are privy to this, that perform this selection process, keeping it fair. But if there's any more you can expand on that selection process, I think it would be helpful and it'd be appreciated too.
Thank you. So what we typically like to do on a project like this is not just think about it as a sewer separation project. You know, as a manager of engineering services, I'm always thinking about traffic and sewers and water main and things like that. But what we like to do is consider a project like this and improving the neighborhood, and then drawing on some of our past studies like the long-range transportation action plan, the short-term action plan, some of the Erie South environmental study report that Stantec did, and even the active transportation plan, and pulling that all together and writing a request that we can give out to the area consultants to look at that material, absorb it, and understand what we are looking for, and even come up with some of their own ideas, but still ask them to submit a proposal of what they see as they read those documents and they hear and read the scope of work that we put in the proposal document, and then submit a document back to us that can clearly demonstrate to us that they have communication skills, that they understand the project and the work plan, that they can provide us references that of similar projects in other municipalities that we can call and get references from. Clearly demonstrate to us and the review team that they have a quality management, a project management team that can look at not only the management of the cost, but the design and the technical aspects of the project. That they can put together a clear and logical project work plan from start to finish, from almost zero down to the construction of the work. And then the quality and completeness of their proposal is very often the quality and completeness of their design assignment. And obviously the price. Price is also a component in our evaluation process.
And thank you. And Mr. Hammond?
Deputy Mayor, thank you. A comment. I too had received a number of questions over the weekend concerning the costing of this project and why it was awarded to AECOM. And after talking to administration and having the scoring matrix better explained to me, I come to find out that the costing is a very, very small portion of that matrix. It's an important portion of it, but it's a very small portion. And I feel confident that the 3 people that we have that sit down there and go through these bids do that with the best intentions of trying to get the best dollar value they can for the municipality of Leamington. And that's all really I have to say in terms of a comment.
Okay, thank you. So we have the motion on the floor. Yes, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Alan. Now we're moving on to the investment in affordable housing program for Ontario and the extension of that. And with that, I'd ask Ms. Orton for the report.
Thank you. Taking you back to 2005, a housing analysis and recommended strategies report was approved by the city and the county, and that confirmed the need for additional rental units for low-income households from across the region. That report resulted in funding through the Canada-Ontario Affordable Housing Program, and through that program, Council expressed an interest in participating in February 2006. To date, 2 developments have proceeded pursuant to that funding, one at 91 Talbot Street East and the other on Robson Road. So since 2011, Council has also approved participation in the program in 2014 and again in 2015. This year, we've received a correspondence from the City of Windsor, who administers the program, looking for confirmation by August 11th whether the municipality wishes to participate this year. And I did respond to the City of Windsor advising that the municipality would participate contingent on council approval. To participate, the municipality must agree to reduce property taxes for the rental housing project by setting the tax rate equivalent to or lower than the single residential rate, or provide a grant in lieu, and to pass the required bylaw to effect that reduction. There is not a specific allocation to each municipality, so if a proposal is received for a project in the municipality and the municipality has not indicated its willingness to participate, then funding would not be provided to that project. So if a municipality does pass that bylaw, it agrees to reduce that tax rate to the single residential rate for the 20-year duration of the program. The Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing encourages but does not require municipalities who participate to also provide exemptions from or deductions of development charges and Planning Act and related permit fees. So the recommendation is that Council confirm the municipality's participation in the Social Infrastructure Fund rental housing capital component of the Investment in Affordable Housing Program for 2016 and 2017.
Great, thank you, Ruth. Gentlemen, questions? Mr. Jacobs, sorry.
Thank you,
Councillor
Deputy-
Jacobs.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Ruth, what is the current status on low rental units that we have here? Any idea at all?
I'm sorry, the current status, I didn't hear the question.
How many do we have? Like, do we have enough for the immediate occupancy that we need, or are we deficient?
I would suggest that we remain deficient, just given that nothing has really changed in the status of the funding program. The funding program is still relying on the 2005 report that indicated there was a deficiency in the general area of low-income housing. Only 2 have been qualified under that funding program in Leamington. I can't tell you if there's been other proposals that have been submitted that just haven't qualified. But since there's only about 12 that I'm aware of as far as residential units, since 2005, I would suggest that there's still the need in Leamington for that low-income affordable housing.
If I may?
Yes, certainly.
If we participate in this program, where would these be located? Would that be at the whim of the municipality, or would that be the private sector that's putting them up for the locations? Like, would we have any say in those?
Not necessarily, no. It's usually private enterprise that would submit the proposal to the funding program itself. and they would approve that proposal. So it could be located anywhere within the municipality, and it would go through the planning process if it's new construction, just like any other development would proceed.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. When I read the report this week, and the one thing I found that was kind of left out was the actual math to it all. So if you're like me, I asked today to get verification. That's taken the, if it were to happen in an apartment building again, let's say use the example of Talbot Street before, that tax rate is 3.312. We're dropping it down then to that point at 1.78. Had it been the Talbot apartments there, that'd be a difference in 2016 of going from $18,551 down to $9,657. So that's kind of what I was looking for in this report, but I found that was missing was the math with all the brass tacks of it. But we have we've sat here before and listened to reports, the need that is in this community for affordable housing. So I thought this was already kind of that we had thrown our support behind this, and so I will be doing it again as well tonight.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Wilkinson had stated to that, it was that the United Way came to us with that report about how the great need for in our area for the poverty and stuff, so I would support that and would move that.
Great, thank you. I think you have a good point there. There's some things we just have to do, whether we're making money or not making money. It's just something we have to take care of our own, so good point. It was moved by Councillor Dunn, I'm sorry. Seconded by? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you didn't want to point out my error. But thank you for not pointing out my error. Okay. I appreciate the fact that you didn't embarrass me. Okay. So on that note, all in favor? Okay, carried. Thank you. No, we're good. We're good. Mutual Admiration Society going here. Okay, we'll move on to the Ontario Trillium Foundation Ontario 150 Grant Program, and for that again, Ms. Orton.
So in 2017, Canada will celebrate its 150th anniversary. And as part of that celebration, the province has announced the Ontario 150 funding program, and that includes funding for community celebrations, a community capital program, and a partnership program. So very briefly, the community celebration program includes eligible initiatives such as multicultural events, food festivals, art exhibitions, sporting events, themed workshops, and youth innovation or entrepreneur competitions. There's a total of $7 million in funding, and those applications are due by September 2nd, 2016. The Community Capital Program provides one-time funding to support the repair, renovation, or retrofit of existing community facilities in amounts between $5,000 to $500,000. All projects must be completed by March 31st, 2018. You'll note there's a typo in my report. So that's March 2018. And the partnership program supports collaborative projects. The project must engage and empower youth through creative and cultural expression, diversity and inclusion, environmental stewardship, youth entrepreneurship, healthy living, or civic engagement. The province is providing a total of $5 million in funding through that program, and applications are due by September 30th, 2016. The first step to be eligible for funding under any of those categories is to register the municipality with the Ontario Trillium Foundation. Administration will be meeting later in the week to identify the events and projects that may be eligible for funding, but there is the fast approaching registration and the application deadlines. A municipal primary contact must be designated and authorized to bind the municipality for the purpose of that registration and applying for those funds. And a further report will be brought forward outlining those recommended projects and events for the funding application. So the recommendation is that administration be authorized to apply for that funding through the Ontario 150 grant program, that Peter Neufeld be designated as the primary contact and authorized to bind the municipality for the purpose of registration and applying for that funding pursuant to that program.
Thank you, Ruth. Questions? Moved by Councillor Hammond, seconded by Councillor Dunn. Were there any questions? Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Ruth, under the 3 grant applications there, like up to 10,000, 25,000, so forth, which category do we fall into there?
I believe we'd fall into all of the categories. So it's possible we could apply under any one of those.
Okay. So we're possibly could get any one of the 3 amounts?
Yes,
Oh,
I would suggest the applications at this point are open. We'll be discussing them further, but I think we'd be eligible for any one of those as long as we meet the eligibility requirements generally.
Thank you. So to that, Ruth, we're just doing the initial step then. The being particular is not required at this point in time.
That's right, it's just a registration
Okay,
process.
great, thank you. All in favor then? Carried. Thank you. And now we're moving on to matters of approval. For approval, the minutes of the Leamington Municipal Heritage Advisory Committee held on June 22nd. Moved by Councillor Jacobs, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. All in favor? Carried. Other matters for consideration, there are none. Report on closed session, again, there's nothing. And then we have consideration of bylaws.
Bylaw 4716 being a bylaw to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw number 89009 for the municipality of Leamington, which pertains to the subject land ZBA 135, 1502 Mercia Road 2. This is a result of the report that was considered during the public meeting this evening. Bylaw 5116 being a bylaw to stop up and close part of Victoria Avenue North lying north of Ivan Street. Council recall on May 9th, 2016, administration was authorized to initiate this process and bring the bylaw back at a future meeting. And bylaw 5216 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of its meeting held August 22, 2016.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Verbicki, seconded by Councillor Dunn. All in favor? And that's carried. And then, Councillor Hammond, I will ask you to come up for notices of motion, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a motion before us made by Councillor Jacobs, seconded by Councillor Verbeek. Would you like to read the motion?
The motion I'm the motion I'm requesting is that the Essex County Council, that we submit a letter to Essex County Council, encourage them to encourage the negotiating committee for the library to come to some type of an agreement or to possibly arrange a settlement with them. And I hopefully with the my understanding is that the Teamsters currently have a tentative agreement on the table, that maybe that would encourage them to maybe get down to brass tacks and get this thing settled. It's been going on way too long. So my request is that we, municipalities, submit a letter to County Council encouraging the library board to expedite this negotiations.
Thank you, Councillor Jacobs. Do we have any questions or comments? I have a comment, if I can. You know, as this labor dispute enters its 60th day, these ladies have got better things to do than sit in our chambers when they could be working and helping the people in this municipality. And I think submitting this letter to County Council is the very least that we can do as a council to try and encourage them to get back to the negotiating table, get this labor dispute over, and let's let these people get back on the job. I'll now take the vote. All in favor of the letter? Opposed? Carried. I'll now turn the chair back over to Deputy Mayor McDonald.
Thank you. And now we move on to open session. Is there anything from council? Oh, Councillor Dunn?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, I just wanted to comment on the Habitat for Humanity, the the groundbreaking ceremony. It was very exciting that Susan Fast is the family and her three children who got it, and well deserved. She was full of tears, and it's really exciting the amount of stuff that the Habitat and that Mike is incredible, the way he can speak and all the knowledge he has pertaining to the Habitat for Humanity, but helping to get a family to step up, it was really, really incredible, and I enjoyed that very much. The other thing was to the Sip and Savor and the judging with the chefs there. Boy, those people really know how to cook, and I learned a few things on it. It was very, very tasty and a lot of fun. So next year, everybody should come out and check that out. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I was going to comment too on the Sip and Savor. I didn't make it Friday night, but any of those that I did speak to said it was awesome. I mean, they really enjoyed themselves. It was a little different venue than what we've had in the past. For those of us that were there on Saturday night, we were surfboarding after about the first half hour, which is unfortunate. You know, it seems like the big events that we've had lately, Hogs for Hospice, this one, and some of the others have been, and the powwow, have all been rainy weekends. But nevertheless, hopefully it'll be even a bigger success next year.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson.
I'll let you have the final comments in regards to Sip and Savor here tonight. But yeah, I just wanted to throw a thank you out to all the volunteers that helped out there. Again, just like Hogs for Hospice, it's impressive the amount of volunteers that seem to come out of the woodwork to help out with these events across Leamington. I think it's evidence, you know, that the community is willing to throw their support around making this community better all the time. Fantastic work again. Thank you.
Well, I certainly enjoyed my time volunteering with Sip and Savor. I went there Friday night for the opening, and we talked about how this was an evolution from the Heinz, what was it, the Heinz Picnic to the Tomato Festival and on to Sip and Savor. Times change and practices change and social business changes, and I think that's just part of it. Culinary is huge right now, and we need to hook our wagon to that star. I think if we don't, we'll be missing out. And what's worked in the past doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for the future. So I'm hoping for some of the naysayers out there that they'll start to buy into some of the things that we're trying to do. I think, too, that whenever there's a drought, we should charge. We should charge by planning an event, but really not actually going to have it. And then when it rains, have it the next weekend. And we could probably get money for the fact that it has now rained for the farmers. Do we have any takers? Oh, you're not a farmer anymore. But anyway, it was a great event. Too bad about the rain Saturday night. It was a beautiful, beautiful venue to have for the final night, but we're looking forward to next year. And I have to commend staff. There were so many of our staff that were there, beyond just the original committee, like Janine and Kira and Caitlin, but there were a lot of our staff people that put in a lot of hours, and it was fun to work with a lot of them. It was just a very enjoyable experience, and I think, yeah, we're moving forward, and we're showing people we have a lot of heart. And again, the naysayers will have to notice sooner or later, because I think we're doing some good work. So a great time. Is there anything from staff? Nothing? Okay, so then we'll move on to statement of members, non-debatable. Nothing there. Oh, we should talk about AMO for a minute. Yes, Councillor Dunn, did you want to speak to AMO? Our conference at Caesars in Windsor, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario.
That's through you, Deputy Mayor. It was quite a learning experience, learning the cap and trade and a lot of different other things going on. Yeah, I always get a lot out of those conferences, so it's very enjoyable for myself. No luck at the casino, but that's just the way things go. After that.
Was there anyone else? Thank you. Anyone else? We had the opportunity to listen to Premier Wynne and the leaders of the other parties as well. No promises of any kind of money and no reduction in hydro, but it was interesting to hear their song and dance. And there were some really interesting, for me, I had a couple of really interesting plenary sessions as well. So good. It was a learning experience again. Good. Okay, if there's nothing else then, motion to adjourn. Counselor Wilkinson, Counselor Jacobs, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, and good night.